And welcome back to the Bubble Buddies. We are here. It is Monday night for all three of us. And we are going to do a little weekend recap for you of the Toronto 6 games and maybe a little bit of, NWHL recap. To start off with, we're going to talk about, puck drop in the opening game and then as well Sunday game. And then, we're going to move on to how that's kind of changed our rankings and what we're looking forward to this week out of NWHL hockey. So to start off with, Saturday's game, Cameron unfortunately didn't get to watch, but I was giving him some updates. Obviously, it was a bit of a tough loss, but not a lot that you can really ask. You couldn't really ask for more out of them, considering it was their first game.
And it is the team that I predicted to win the championship that they lost to.
Mm-hmm. And I know when we spoke with Alyssa, she was really high on Metro as well. So it's a good team. I think they got off to a bit of a rough start with that first goal there. But overall, I think it was a pretty solid performance from the group as a whole, and you could really see them progress throughout the game. Yeah.
Well, 40 shots, I think, any game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned this in my brief, chatting points yesterday that you can find on my YouTube channel. Toronto outshot yesterday. They outshot Minnesota, and I was saying a little bit of how much they outshot Metropolitan by. I think you can attribute to the effects of chasing the game from being behind from minute one into the game. But at the same time, I mean, anytime you put 40 shots towards the other team's net, I think it gives you a lot to go off of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and score effects, they do account for some of that, but when you have a bad team, it doesn't really factor in all that much. And so the fact that they did outshoot them in that first game, I think it was 40-19. That's quite the differential.
Yeah, it was.
That's impressive, and I don't think all of that can be explained away by score effects. So it's going to start to come together.
No, for sure.
Yeah, and and part of having 40 shots too is you need to have the puck, and if you're constantly chasing the puck, you're not going to have it. And so the fact that they did actually end up with enough possession to get those 40 shots, I think it speaks a lot to the talent on this team, and I think that going forward, it's only going to get better. It was a rough first start to the period. It wasn't within a minute. It was a minute and 10 seconds into the game to have that first goal, and then you're
minute one,
and you're chasing that game the whole time. Mentally, it's a bit hard to come back from something like that. But throughout the game and I got to watch a bit of Sunday's game. You could see the team progressing and coming a little bit more together as a unit.
Because 40 shots and not scoring, obviously there's lots of question marks there about this team. What does it take for them to score? Are they going to be able to score? Is their offense any good? How do you get 40 shots and not score? But all those questions were answered yesterday with that amazing offensive performance. Just what a game in general. Even though the result wasn't what we wanted, sometimes people might say the refs had the whistles up their asses. They definitely didn't in that game. Total opposite.
Yeah. Tons
of penalties. I don't know whether you like it or not. It just really showcased the skill on both teams.
Yeah.
And great start for Toronto. We saw what they're capable of. Just got to play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, well, I'm talking of the refs. I think that the Toronto special teams really performed well. I think it was the first 4 or 5 goals, all 5 of their goals maybe. None of them were scored at 5-on-5. It was 4v4 or on the power play. I thought their penalty kill did a pretty good job. In that first game, that was something that I pegged right off the bat, was that their penalty kill looked pretty dangerous. And overall, offensively, I saw Lindsay Eastwood gets the first goal in franchise history. So it's always great when you get your blue line kind of producing as well, and to get team scoring going.
Wilson Bennett had 2 goals.
Wilson Bennett had a great performance as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the subject of penalties, I didn't know this, I guess. I don't know if you two did. So on a delayed penalty, if you score, it's still a penalty.
Yeah, I thought it was, I didn't think that was the case, but I guess it is, because we did see that in that game.
Twice.
So that's an NWHL specific
scored on a delayed penalty, and then Minnesota scored the 5-4 goal on the penalty that eventually they went up 5-on-3 and tied.
I guess I lost track because there were so many penalties, but that's just an NWHL specific rule, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
I guess so. I like it though.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, I think that's a really good rule. I think that's something actually the NHL should look at adopting, because
speaking of rules, sorry to interrupt you, there was there was that disallowed goal by the Whitecaps yesterday, and I think even the commentators seemed to be unsure about why it was disallowed because they thought it had to do with the net being off, which it wasn't. But the way I don't remember the name of the Whitecaps player who scored, but she was basically sliding along the ice into the net and then pushed the puck in. But I mean, in hockey, you're not allowed to direct the puck into the net with anything other than a stick. So my assumption is that that's why they disallowed it, because basically it was intentionally. I mean, I don't really know what part of her body pushed it in because she was just kind of
The whole
sliding into
thing.
the net. Yeah. So I
The
think
whole
that's
thing.
you can't really say that that was unintentional, even though she was just sliding along the ice. Like you're moving, you push the puck into the net. I think that's why it didn't count.
That was my impression as well. But yeah, I remember the same thing as you, Cameron. The commentators seemed to think that the net was off, which it definitely wasn't. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's hard when you're, with the bubble and all that. Are the
For sure.
commentators at the game? I think they are, right? They're in the bubble.
Yeah, I believe that they are in the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they would get a look as well. I know
Yeah.
when we were talking with Mike after the first game there on Saturday, he was talking about the production quality, but that's one thing that I would like to see more on the broadcast is maybe a bit of a better replay. Because I was looking at that highlight. I didn't get to see it live, but I saw it, and my initial impression was that it was a kicking motion because the whole body was kind of sliding. If you want to call it a kicking motion,
Yeah,
uh,
I guess that's what the official ruling would be.
that
But
would be what the official ruling was. But then they were talking about the net coming off, and I'm curious as to maybe if it's like similar to that delayed penalty ruling. If it's like if the net comes even just a little bit off, maybe it doesn't have to be off the posts. I don't really know.
yeah,
I'm glad it didn't count, but I don't see a
yeah.
lot of reasons why
I mean, it was a tough break for the Whitecaps. It was a big turning point at that point too, because Toronto had all the momentum after that.
Mhm.
But of course, in the end, it didn't end up mattering. Which, honestly, like I say, we got 3 games all in one. Like the first game, Toronto dominated. The second game, Minnesota came back, and then the third game was just both teams fighting for it into overtime. And honestly, I'd say this is like a classic Canada-Russia game in men's hockey. Like nothing beats it. Just high scoring. One team goes up to a big lead, the other team comes back, and then somebody ends up winning 6-5 eventually. I mean, in general, I guess people do assume that women's hockey is lower scoring, and often it is still exciting, but lower scoring. But I mean, it goes to show in that game that that's not always the case because, yeah, 6-5 back and forth game. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think in some ways you'd liken it to a World Junior game with the type of momentum swings. I think a lot of the times in kind of I guess men's Olympic men's World Championship men's, you don't see as common of big swings in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
5-1 to 5-5. I liken that a little bit more to the World Juniors, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like because I said it yesterday, is I really felt like Minnesota really started to believe in themselves after the 5-3 goal. I don't think
Mm.
Toronto actually really got down on themselves.
They might have just
Unlike
gotten a little
maybe
too
you
high on
see at,
themselves.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Toronto got down on themselves, unlike maybe you'd see at a World Junior in a situation like that. And I think you
Mm.
attribute that to it being professional hockey players. But yeah, I mean, I think that was for me the turning point of the game
Yeah.
is when Minnesota popped it right at the end of the second period to go to
And the
5-3.
momentum didn't quite carry over into the third too, like you might expect. Like I was happy about Toronto in that sense. Like they just lost all their momentum at the end of the period. Minnesota had the momentum. But to start the third, that was probably the most boring part of the game. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe the first like 5 to 10 minutes of the third period, it kind of just stayed 5-3. Nothing really happened much. And maybe that's where the six could have really tried to take advantage and capitalize. They could have really ended the game there. But instead, Minnesota comes back. They end up scoring two. The rest of the game's hard fought, and unfortunately, it didn't go our way.
Yeah, well, and just coming back to kind of like mentality and momentum with that, like, in my own experience playing with sports, you might come out and you just might start that third period. I didn't get to watch the third period. I got to watch the end of the second. But I did have the sense that they just mentally kind of lost it and they didn't have the focus going into the third period, and they might play well. But, again, I didn't get to see the third period, so I can't really speak to this, but maybe they came out and they weren't as focused. They might have been a bit shaken from that late goal because, you go up 5-1 and you might get a little high on yourself. But when you get
Yeah.
that, late 5-2 goal and then that 5-3 goal in the final minute, they always say like
Yeah.
some of the most important shifts in hockey is the shift right after a goal and the final minute of a period. When it's winding down, you can't let up, and you could see that kind of shift in focus, and that it and the at the end of the day, that mentality and that shift in focus, it doesn't matter how they play the third period because they should have locked it down at the end of the second there. And if they don't have those 2 goals, Minnesota can score as much as all those goals that they did in the third period, and at the end of the day, it wouldn't matter.
Like the third period was a whole new game, you could say, but yeah, like the Toronto could have ended it before that, but that's the turning point when Minnesota scored that third. Which, speaking of that, another thing that I kind of wanted to discuss is the goaltending. Because I'd say, I mean, Ridgewell played well most of the game, and she gave up those 2 goals at the end of the second, but you can't really blame her because she didn't really face much action all period. And then all of a sudden, at the very end there, Minnesota just turns it on. But she did let in 5 goals. So, I mean, I'm kind of wondering what you guys are thinking. You had Julie play the first game, Ridgewell play the second. Who do you think will start the third game for Toronto?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't really speak too much because I didn't get to watch too much of that second game. But with Julie, she let in 2 goals. She only had 2 goals against on 19 shots. Not the best save percentage necessarily, but it was that first kind of, first game jitters. It's the first minute of the game and it goes in, and then late in that first period, another goal. But I liked kind of the momentum that she built up and the kind of the confidence that she did as the game progressed, and she made some pretty stellar saves in that first game. 5 goals, and especially 2 late in a period like that, from what I see, I think Julie gets the start in the third game, but it's also hard to argue against Ridgewell, who, got you a point and got you as close to a win as you've had in your 2 games.
Yeah. My impression is that Truly will probably start. My impression is that she was at least slightly ahead coming into the tournament of Ridgewell, given that she got the first game.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I think Ridgewell is capable of taking the net. Like I said, when we had Alyssa on, she took the net in Djurgården in Sweden from an established starter as a rookie. So I think she's capable of doing that. I also don't think she had a terrible game. Like Cameron said, she got a lot of action just all of a sudden after having nothing really at her net for most of the game. But at the same time, she didn't do anything to steal the crease from Julie, if Julie was viewed as the established starter coming into the tournament. So I think you'll probably see her again at some point, but I wouldn't say it'd be the next game. Yeah. I think you'll probably see 2 games from Julie and 1 from Ridgewell in the rest of the regular season.
Mm-hmm. Either way, it's good to have 2 goalies that you can trust, because that's one area where Toronto had an advantage yesterday. Mm-hmm. Minnesota was going with Levier for the second game in a row. Yeah. And yeah, she kind of struggled in the first period there with all those goals. We actually saw them take her out and then put her back in for the second.
Yeah, and she looked a little shaken up at one point as well. Mm-hmm. So that is going to be something that I think as the tournament goes on is going to continue to be a story, because they're playing so much hockey in such a short period of time. If you don't have 2 goalies who you can rely on, you're going to be in a much more compromised position than if you do. Mm-hmm. I can certainly attest to that as a fan of the Edmonton Oilers with Stu Skinner on the bench right now.
Yeah, well, as Leafs fans, we can kind of relate to that because we've got Michael.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Practicing today when Jack Campbell had to take a day off. Yeah, I think Toronto's in a great position though with their goaltending. I do think they've got 2 strong goaltenders that are capable of being starters. But like Nick said, I think it's Truly's crease to lose and it's Ridgewell's to earn. And I don't think Truly was so bad and Ridgewell was so good that anything's really going to change there. And in a short tournament like this, you do kind of want to ride your starter and you want to have that confidence, because you need, speaking as I'm a lacrosse goalie, speaking from goaltending experience, that confidence, it only builds throughout a tournament like this. And when you get a bit of a goaltending controversy, when you don't have a full season, it can be hard for both goalies to then, honestly work together and develop that kind of starting goalie backup relationship. And as well, just to prepare when you don't know what games you're starting. So I do think that, unless Truly loses the crease or if Ridgewell steals it, we're going to see Truly continue to start the majority of games.
That is true what you said there. But at the same time, I think having two kind of brings the best out of both of them because
Mhm.
it forces that competition in a sense.
Yeah, and
But
it's great.
it
It's
all
great to
depends
have
on the
that.
person.
Yeah, and it's great to have that competition. But there's a difference between having competition and kind of knowing that, oh, this is my crease to lose, and being in a goaltending controversy and going, I don't know if I'm starting games. I think it's good that they do have kind of a clear-cut starter in Chuli. And it's great that they've got Ridgewell on the cusp ready to kind of take over if they need her to, because you're going to get that competition. But I think that's the problem with a goaltending controversy, where you start to kind of be like, well, who's going to start which games? It doesn't leave your starting goalie with a lot of confidence. It leaves your backup goalie with a little bit of confusion as to where they stand. And so I don't think this early in the season, they're really going to be toying with things too much, because they got to let things develop. They got to see, what this team is capable of. We've seen great flashes of it, but they've really got to come together. I saw today on their rest day, they were all out on a hike at Lake Placid, kind of doing some team bonding. So that's kind of fun to see as well.
Another thing to keep in mind with the goaltending and with just the team in general, they've played two good teams so far. Minnesota was very good last year. Metro looks like they're going to be good this year. So, they've really been tested and they've shown that they're capable of beating anyone, I'd say, because they really could have easily won that game yesterday. They probably should have. At the same time, though, there comes a point where you have to stop making excuses because at the end of the day, they don't have a win yet. And when it's only a 5-game preliminary round there before we get into the bonus games or whatever they're using, whatever term they're using. Yeah, when it's only 5 games, at some point you do have to stop making excuses about your opponent being good and you have to start winning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at the end of the day, they've played two good teams, so they've really been tested.
Yeah, well, and I
Sure.
think strength of schedule what is really going to factor in here, because they are playing the three best teams right off the bat, and then they'll get Connecticut and Buffalo. So I think that's actually really great for the team. It's going to show them what their tough competition is. Kind of see them how they match up. It's a bit of a litmus test, and then they get to play two last year's weaker teams in Buffalo and Connecticut before then having to play those bonus games and maybe seeing Metro, Minnesota, or Boston again. And you're seeing these teams for the second time, and you're a little bit more prepared, and you're a little more sure in your team identity. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens in those bonus games.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, they didn't get filled in this weekend, and so you're playing two good teams, and like I said, they didn't get smashed. So you get another chance at them. I think Toronto very well could beat either of these teams if they face them again, which there's
Mm-hmm.
probably a pretty decent chance they will.
Yeah, if I'm Toronto, I'm not getting down. I think that there's some really great, you know, bright spots with these two losses. I think there's a lot to build on. I think having a rest day is going to really help them as well, just to kind of calm down. And Minnesota did have that precedent of coming from behind and beating Boston the day before, so they kind of had that in them.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto hasn't had to have that position yet, and they've never had to play with a lead. So it's just a process of learning and coming together as a team. And now that they've been in these positions, I think they're a young team, and a lot of them are new to this league, and it was a great learning experience. I do want to say welcome to Toronto sports, Toronto 6, now that you have broken a major or lost your major lead and broken many hearts. Welcome. You're officially a professional Toronto sports team.
Yeah. No, I think like you said, especially yesterday's game, the one that I watched, there's definitely plenty of positives. I think we're disappointed with the result. Like they got a point that they easily could have and should have done better. But I think now they've faced some adversity. Being in that position, having the game well in hand and then blowing it. So that's something that they can build off of going forward. And it was kind of a wake-up call in a sense, having the team come back against them like that. Like now they've shown their skill, they've shown how good they are, and that they're capable of winning, but at the same time they couldn't pull it off. So that's just going to help them next time they're in that situation in terms of closing out games. Kind of as a reminder, it's not over until it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the one thing, I guess, closing it out, playing a full 60 minutes. That's what they got to work on.
So my next question for you guys then is, from the entire weekend, we can do by game, but we already kind of did the Saturday game, Nick and I. You guys can do the Sunday game, but for the weekend, who is your player of the weekend? For me, if I'm going to start off, I really like how Lindsay Eastwood played. I thought she really showed some hustle on the back end, closing the gap. And she's got the first franchise goal. I think that's a huge thing that you can't really ignore, and it's like what it means to the team. And especially it coming from someone on your blue line with that kind of energy, you could see how fired up everyone was. So I think I got to give my player of the weekend, because I really liked her in that first game as well, to Lindsay Eastwood.
Cameron, you want to go ahead?
Okay. I guess it's hard to pick one. Again, I didn't see the first game, I guess, but from yesterday's game, Brianne Wilson-Bennett really stood out with the 2 goals and just overall a good game. Same with Grant Mentis. She had a very good game yesterday. I noticed both of the Woods too. And of course, Dark Angelo, the captain. She definitely seems to be a difference maker out there. But I don't know. I think in general, I would say Eastwood, because she scored the first goal for the team. She's a defenseman, definitely heard her name a lot. And in the first game, being a game where they didn't score, I think that if you're talking in terms of both games, it would be fair to give it to a defenseman. So I'll say Eastwood as well.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, you guys not leaving me with a whole lot of options. I was going to highlight Grant Mentis. I talked about her on Saturday. But since Cameron kind of ran the list there, I'll go with Lindsay Eastwood's defense partner and say Megan Quinn.
Megan Quinn,
Okay.
close personal friend of the show. Yeah, all great options. Do you guys have a favorite goal? Because when I was watching the highlights to kind of prepare, there was one goal that really stood out for me, and I believe it was one of the ones in the second period, I believe. And it was the one from the slot with that nifty little drop pass. I can't remember because I didn't watch it, but I hope you guys know the one I'm talking about.
I think I do.
With some names.
I don't know if I'm thinking of the same one, but I think they gave the goal to Taylor Woods, and then they corrected it and said it was actually Emily Fluke. But then I don't know who ended up scoring it. But
yeah, I think it was a
is that the one you're talking about?
It was the power play goal where there was the shot on net, and she they were stacked in the slot, and she dropped it back and fired it home. That was a nice goal, and I got fired up watching that one. And,
yeah, not sure if that's the one I'm thinking of, but I remember that goal.
Yeah, and honestly, just seeing the creativity on plays like that, I saw someone try to pull off the Kucherov no move. The offensive creativity really, for me, was a shining spot in yesterday's game. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that flourishes and continues to grow, because obviously we've already seen it develop from that first game where there was no goals. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So if you guys have any highlights that you'd like to showcase or a favorite goal from the game.
Yeah, just the one Cameron was mentioning. I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about, Claire, but the one Cameron was mentioning was a beautiful passing play. I also thought it was Woods who scored, but I know it is Fluke on the score sheet, so I don't know exactly what happened, but that was just a gorgeous passing play. I tweeted out, "This is gross."
Well, the way it went in too, it's like she tried to. I don't know if she tried to deke to the backhand or if it was just a fake, but took it on the forehand, deflected it in, and then made the fake move to the backhand. So it looked like that's where it was going, but meanwhile it slid in past Levier on the other side.
I know the goal you're talking about. I'm talking about a different goal, but it almost looked like she tried to pull off the no move goal.
That's the one you mentioned there.
Yeah, I was really impressed. Defensively, personally, I don't know about you guys if you picked up on this, but when the other team when they are on the power play, actually, I noticed that they're giving up some shorthanded rushes.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
I was wondering if that's a trend that you guys have picked up on as well.
Oh yeah.
It's a bit concerning for me, and so I'm wondering, did you guys pick up on if they're doing 2 defensemen or if they're running the 1 defenseman? The 1 and 4.
Didn't notice.
If that's something I don't know. I think they've got the speed to catch up. They're a fast team, but I think in the long run, that's something that they're gonna have to look at fixing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to watch out for that.
Yeah.
Because one of those shorthanded rushes, I think, resulted in the disallowed goal.
Yeah.
Did Minnesota actually score any shorthanded goals in the game? I mean, there were so many penalties that it was hard to keep track.
I think so. I think their 4th goal was shorthanded and also resulted in a penalty to Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously they had a good power play, but they'll have to watch the rushes and stuff and not give up any shorthanded opportunities, because that's something that's pretty easy to fix, and that could have made a difference in the game.
Yeah. And again, I think it comes down to that mentality and the focus that I think kind of cost them that game. It's just not there, but that's something that really you do have to develop with your team. And it does come with time. It's not going to come in the first 2 games. It's just kind of a bummer that this is a short season and they don't get the time to kind of develop into that team that I think they could be in an actual season and not a bubble season.
And I know Digit after the game said, she was asked what went wrong, and she said they're young and dumb. So
yeah,
it's going to come with experience.
That's fair.
Yeah. And it is a good, like Cameron said, like it's a good learning experience. Although as a Leafs fan, just because it's a good learning experience doesn't mean that they're actually going to learn from it, and they might still do it. So
Well,
you never know.
But no, I think it's a good point, though. I think it's a lot of the time very good, especially in a tournament like this, but even in a regular season, to face some adversity, before you mount that summit. So it's good that it happened early, or better that it happened earlier than it did late.
Yeah, well, you can talk about, the Tampa Bay Lightning and how they had that amazing historic season. What was it? It feels like it was like 600 years ago now.
2 years ago, and then they got swept by the Blue Jackets.
And then they come back the next year with that adversity, and they didn't have the best season, but that's the year that they win the Stanley Cup. So I
That's
think
exactly what I was thinking of too.
Yeah, so I think a little bit of adversity early on is going to serve the team well. Get the learning experiences out of the way, so that maybe by the time.
And in a tournament like this, you think of Canada losing 6-0 to Russia at the World Juniors 2 years ago, or I guess that was last year.
Yeah, I don't think a lot
the World Juniors just happened this year, but yeah, lost 6-0 to Russia, beat them in the gold medal game. It goes back to what we mentioned in the first episode about beating a team twice. You lose, you face adversity, you face the team again, you come back better, stronger.
Yeah, and you really get to learn.
And this year, the States in World Juniors, they didn't lose to Canada, but they lost their first game, and then they ran the table, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one thing I want to ask you guys about is, what is your thought on the intermission Zamboni? Because people are going wild on Twitter for the Zamboni. Thoughts?
And I thought it was kind of weird that we got to actually watch the Zamboni, but I didn't notice anything special about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I don't really get. It's kind of satisfying to watch. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm too old for it, I guess.
People have just been going wild for it, and I just wonder what it is about hockey fans and people who play hockey in general and their obsession with Zambonis, because I feel like every hockey player I meet, they're always like, yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Zamboni driver. Everyone waves at the Zamboni driver when they go around. So I think it's hilarious that people have really latched on to this. I saw Nick had a funny little tweet with the World Juniors penalty music from a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
Really trying to piss off Ray Ferraro there. So is Ray Ferraro banned from the podcast?
No, you can come on.
Okay.
He can go drink his wine with Craig Button.
So this is Ray and Craig Button's official invitation to appear on the Bubble Buddies. If we don't hear from them, we're going to assume it's because Nick pissed off Ray with that tweet with the World Juniors music.
I'm pretty dislikable, so my
Again,
bad.
Don't roast him; he's sensitive. Okay, so just to wrap things up here, what do you guys think of the other games and the other teams? What are you liking from them, and do you guys think your standings are shaking out? I'm pretty confident. Oh, Nick's not too confident.
Well, I'm happy with Metropolitan.
Yeah, I'm happy with having Metro and Minnesota and Boston in my top 3. I think that's pretty consistent. I can see Toronto kind of falling into that 4th seed that I have them in. But Cameron had Toronto in last, and so I want to know how he's feeling about that pick.
Well, I'm hoping that they do better, but I mean, one thing that I did have, I actually had Toronto beating Minnesota in my original predictions, which most of the game I was actually thinking, well, hey, it's like going exactly as I predicted. It didn't end up being that way, but I think I had them beating Minnesota, but losing to Buffalo and Connecticut. And that was kind of to show how even it is and how anyone can beat anyone. But I mean, I still feel that way. They didn't end up beating Minnesota, but I still believe that they can beat any team and that any team can beat them. So I really don't know. They could win the rest of their games, the next 3, or they could lose all of them.
Yeah, for me, might have underestimated Metro a smidge. Had them in 4th, had them going 1, 2, and 2 or something through the first 5 games, and then winning a couple. Was that a bad choice in hindsight? Maybe. The rest of them actually, I don't think were too bad. I still see Boston and Minnesota certainly in that, fighting for first and second. But Metro, could be there. I would otherwise just switch Metro and Toronto. I think Boston, Minnesota 1-2, Metro, Toronto, and then Connecticut, Buffalo. I certainly think Metro is a lot closer to the top two than I would have otherwise thought.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the one thing I would do is I have Minnesota beating Boston in the final, and I have them coming in second. After what I've seen from Minnesota, especially with their goaltending situation, if I could go back, I think I would put Metro in that second slot and having them against Boston in the final. But Minnesota in third, I'm confident in Toronto finishing fourth. I think they can pull out wins against Buffalo and Connecticut to kind of sneak in there. What do you guys think about Boston so far, though? Almost undefeated season last year, and then handed a loss right away. What do you guys?
Well, it shows anyone can beat anyone again, because we saw Minnesota beat them, and Toronto should have beaten Minnesota, which means when Toronto does have to play Boston, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be an easy game, and no doubter. I think regardless of what happens, we're going to get a good game.
Yeah, because I know Boston.
Buffalo played them strong for a bit. I think it was 1-1. Towards the latter stage of the first period, I watched that game a bit. I know Boston ended up kind of running away 5-1, but they don't look unbeatable. But I mean, at the same time, their loss came to the same team they lost to last year, and it came by 1 goal. So
yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Time they're not. The giant hasn't been slayed yet.
Yeah.
They've shown us how good they are, all that, but at the same time, they've shown us that they're beatable, which is a good sign, I'd say.
They're looking pretty human right now. I think it's pretty telling that Minnesota, they came back and they got that 2-1 win against Boston. And then the next night, they did end up coming back, but they were in a pretty big hole, a bigger hole against Toronto. Mm-hmm. I believe Boston's Toronto's next game. Another chapter in the storied Toronto-Boston sports rivalry. What do you guys, what are your thoughts on that game? What are you expecting out of it before we wrap things up here?
Well, I think I already touched on it, but first I'll just mention, what I said, they're beatable, and that's good news. I guess it's not a good news if you're a Boston Pride fan, but if you're a fan of every other team, I think that is good news. That's what you want to hear. And with that being said, I think it's good for us as Toronto Six fans, because I think that we have a shot. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're going to win or not. I don't know if they have it. If Boston wins, I certainly won't be surprised, but I think that Toronto is fully capable of beating them or taking them to overtime.
I think Boston wins. I think it's kind of a prove-it game for them, kind of a statement game for them against the team. Well, I guess Metro. They still have to play Metro, but a team who you can make a statement against, I think. More so than when they play Connecticut, maybe. I think they come out and show their stuff and say, "Hey, we're still the team to beat in this league." Because I don't know that beating Buffalo does that. So I think they make a statement tomorrow night. But after that, I think Toronto will be fine.
Yeah, I think it's a good game because I think Toronto's very undervalued going into that game. Considering Boston's pedigree and the fact that they don't have a win yet. So I think that there's a good opportunity maybe for Toronto to get some pressure off their shoulders and rise to the occasion and play them hard. But, I think Boston, like Nick said, definitely looking to make a statement, definitely saying, hey, we are still the team to beat. We are still the favorites here. Toronto's a good team, so it's an opportunity to definitely say, hey, we can hang. So I think we're in for a great game, and I'm really excited to watch. And if you're not watching, guys, you are missing out on some great hockey.
And you know what? In terms of keys to success, I think in terms of what Toronto can do to win, I'd say start the game like they did yesterday and finish the game like they did on Saturday. If they can do that, then they definitely have a good shot.
A full 60-minute game, as every hockey coach has always begged their team to do.
Well, but you saw how they started yesterday with the 5-1 lead, and you saw how they finished with 40 shots after giving up the early lead. There you go. They have both the pieces they need.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to be it from us for now. But stay tuned to our Twitter, to all of our channels. We're going to be having post-game content for you guys. We got a couple articles coming up this week. Once again, we've got Nick, I'm Claire, and we've got Cameron down there. And thank you guys for tuning in, and stay posted for more NWHL content.